Hello, welcome everybody. You are listening to the Pure Strategies Conversations webinar series. We are so excited to offer these unique discussions to help you transform your business to create a more sustainable future. I am Melanie Fleming, Marketing Manager for Pure Strategies. Our team provides sustainability consulting to companies looking to develop goals, enhance their sustainability program, and implement changes in their products, packaging, and supply chains. We are offering these webinars to help companies advance environmental and social performance in their business, helping to show you the possibilities for change and empower you with insights from those at the forefront. You can find past webinars, research reports, and resources on our website, purestrategies.com, including information about work we have done for Seventh Generation, Walmart, Ben & Jerry's, and other sustainability leaders. Your host today, Tim Greiner, Managing Director of Pure Strategies and co-founder of Pure Strategies and the Chemical Footprint Project, has been providing custom sustainability solutions to corporate clients for over 20 years. During the next 30 minutes, Tim will be talking with Katina Boutis, Director of Sustainability at Everlane. Katina is responsible for the environmental and social sustainability impacts across the business, including product, raw materials, supply chain, and operations. Katina is also responsible for setting and achieving the brand's social and environmental commitments, from factory transparency to carbon reduction to removing virgin plastics and conventional cotton from product and supply chain. Katina also shapes Everlane's sustainability narrative and storytelling, translating impact initiatives into engaging consumer-facing stories. Today, Tim and Katina will dive into what transparency really means for Everlane, how they became an early adopter, and how the very definition of transparency has evolved. They will also discuss how the company optimizes its value chain, why they established goals to eliminate virgin plastics from the supply chain, and made the commitment to organic cotton, sharing the challenges of these bold moves and the successes they have achieved. We aim to have time at the end of their conversation to cover your questions. The audience will be muted, so please provide your questions in the Q&A or chat fields. I will ask as many questions as time will allow. The recording of this session will also be posted on the Pure Strategies website. And now let's get started. I'd like to hand it off to Tim.
Thank you, Melanie. Appreciate the introduction. And hello, Katina. Nice to see you.
Hi.
I'm super excited for our conversation today. I've been looking forward to this for a little while now. So maybe before we kind of dig into the Everlane story and transparency and some of the issues that Melanie talked about, I think it would be great if you could just talk a little bit about, your background and your role at Everlane. And then for folks who don't know much about Everlane, just give a little overview of it, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So hi, thank you so much for having me. I, as Melanie already mentioned, am responsible for the sustainability initiatives and programming at Everlane. I work in the supply chain, the broader supply chain team. So work really cross-functionally and closely with our raw materials team, product development, production, logistics, and distribution. But I also work kind of outside of our umbrella of supply chain with marketing and creative communications and PR, as well as some of our merchandising and design functions too. So it really is kind of an all-encompassing role. And I think primarily the reason is because at Everlane, we do have a commitment to our mission and values around social and environmental responsibility. So this role and the team that we have, it's a small team, but a mighty team. It's really built to be kind of cross-functional across, and really touches a number of teams and departments within the organization to ensure that we're really living up to those values. So for anyone that doesn't know, Everlane is a brand based out of San Francisco, California. We are turning 10 later this year. And we were really born out of kind of the direct to consumer, early adopters of that model. But we are a a company that's committed to ethical manufacturing, transparent sourcing, and basically kind of essential clothing that and footwear and accessories that you can wear and enjoy for a long time, that aren't too trendy or following kind of the fashion trends, that are just kind of beautiful and time-tested garments and products that we hope people will have relationships with for a very long time.
Great. Well, I can't believe Everlane's 10 years old. That's just surprising to me. That was really quick. I think, well, first of all, congrats on your role. It seems like a very integrated role, which is so important given the social and environmental mission of the company. I think when Everlane first came on the scene, I think it was probably best known early on for transparency. It still is known for that today. But I think that's the first area I'd love to dive into with you. Like, does Everlane define transparency? What has that journey been like for the company? I'd love to just hear a little bit about that if we could start off there.
Yeah, sure. So you kind of mentioned it already, but Everlane's mission from the very beginning has always been rooted in kind of creating ethical basics that stand the test of time. And the reason why we've done that is really with this promise to radical transparency. So from the way that we source and develop our raw material qualities, to the way that we partner and source with our factories that are ethically aligned with us, we really have wanted to kind of lend insights into this entire journey from the very beginning. So it really started back almost 10 years ago for the brand transparency, that is, as kind of a mechanism to show the true cost breakdown of garments and of products. So from those materials that go into making something up, to the value associated with labor, to the cost of transportation and duties, and ultimately to our markup compared to a traditional kind of retail value. That's really where transparency kind of started for the brand, was like true cost breakdown. We'll show you exactly what we pay, how we get it here, how we make it, and what our markup is to kind of support ourselves and our organization. Today, you can still really find all of our true cost breakdowns on all of our product pages, which I think is something that still remains very true to the ethos and the beginnings of the company. And it's definitely interesting for anybody who is interested in that kind of topic. But the scope of transparency for us has really evolved over time to also include supplier transparency and supply chain transparency. So Everlane was one of the first brands in this space to publish our factory partners' names and locations. It doesn't seem maybe as novel today, especially for a lot of brands in this space who are committed to more, sustainability or transparency narratives or values. But at the time, it really was a novel concept. And we actually went a step further to really give full visibility into those suppliers. So we were publishing factory photos, we were giving backgrounds about the ownership and the operations and kind of the specialties and crafts for each factory. And then we ultimately linked each individual product back to where back to the factories in which they were made in. So at the time, a couple of years ago, that was a very novel concept. I think even today, there are only a small number of brands, both competitors and kind of friendly brands with us that do the same thing. So it still, I think, requires a great deal of trust and relationship building with our suppliers that allows us to do that.
It's and it's something that we've noticed when we've worked with you on, for example, life cycle assessments, where we've wanted to find out where is this component from, where does that component from that tier down supplier come from, and it's been really relatively straightforward with Everlane to be able to trace backwards into the supply chain, and we often, frankly, don't find that with apparel companies, and not just apparel companies, but companies in other industries as well. So the transparency is really there, and it has benefits, I'm sure, that go beyond the communication you're currently doing. When you start digging deeper into the supply chain, how has that definition changed? Do you and where do you see transparency headed for for Everlane as you go down this path?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. I think especially because we've been very loud and committed to this term, and specifically this term of radical transparency from the very beginning. And I think we're still kind of exploring what that definition means to us and where we're going to take it next. And I think where we really are trying to look kind of back to is like, what's the intention and what are the intended impacts for why transparency matters. So we will always use transparency in our supply chain and in our communications as a way to kind of keep us honest and keep us accountable to the work that we're trying to accomplish. But at the same time, I think we have to be a little smart and strategic about how we communicate information, why we're communicating that information, and ultimately what the reasoning is. So we get there are lots of I think transparency minded organizations and commitments that have popped up over the past couple of years. The Open Apparel Registry is a good example, as well as the Transparency Pledge. And I think they're all doing great work and setting really great intentions to publishing supplier lists and publishing things like supplier scores or proportions of product that are made in different places or in different regions. And I think those each have really strong arguments to why we should be participating in these types of programs and kind of driving transparency further. But we've also realized in some of our own internal exploration, particularly as we work our way up our supply chain into those raw material producers or farmer level suppliers, as we engage further up our supply chain, we also hear feedback sometimes that not everybody wants to be publicly listed. And I think there are some risks from their perspective with being fully transparent at that level. And so we're grappling with kind of how can we stay true to our promise while also being mindful of the needs of our suppliers, and how can we continue to be the best partners that we can be, and kind of help further along our mission and our values towards ethics and human rights and environmental responsibility, utilizing transparency as that mechanism to do so.
Okay. May I ask just a quick follow-up on that? Like what would be some of the reasons that a tier down supplier might not want to be transparent about the fact that, they source certain materials or ingredients to Everlane or to any other company?
Yeah, I really think it's just to anyone. And I think where this has come up a lot in recent years is around animal fibers in particular. And I think that there are just a lot of challenges in how information about those suppliers are communicated, and some of the risks to doing so with certain industry groups or nonprofit organizations. And so, yeah, it's a real challenge because on the one hand, we're doing a lot of work to audit on the ground and produce. You mentioned our life cycle assessment programs that we've done in the past, but we've also done a lot on like animal welfare and husbandry and responsible sourcing from the farm level. And we want to be able to talk about these things, but there's also an ownership of like how much are we able to say, especially whenever our suppliers aren't necessarily comfortable with sharing their own information, and how do we communicate that in a way that's truthful and honest and open, but also kind of protective where that needs to happen.
Yeah, you're pushing up against some of the edges. I can see the challenges. So for maybe just to cover off on this transparency piece, for a company that is interested in going down this pathway, what are some of the challenges that others might want to know about they're trying to implement a similar approach, be it pricing, be it supplier names, supplier locations?
Yeah, well, I think the first challenge is probably one of bandwidth and resources, because I think in order to get to that stage, you really have to spend a lot of time and effort fostering relationships and developing those further upstream relationships. And that's something that we really pride ourselves on at Everlane, is really having taken that time to really foster these long-term relationships and ensure that we are aligned, from a mission and values and ethics perspective. So we've historically put a lot of emphasis on that. So I think that's the first thing, is like just being able to have that, build that within your systems and within your process is probably the first step. I think there are other risks, particularly in the face of capacity. As I mentioned, we place a lot of value in developing our relationships with our suppliers, and certainly pre-COVID times, we spent a lot of time physically in our factories working alongside our suppliers. But we're not a large brand. We're actually categorized as a small to medium-sized enterprise. We're an SME. So giving direct line of sight to your suppliers can come with a risk of competitors or other larger brands contacting your suppliers and booking capacity with potentially much larger, more meaningful kind of business. So there's always a little bit of that kind of risk, I think, associated, particularly from a smaller brand perspective, with kind of giving away your secrets and giving away your relationships. Ultimately, we've decided to do that anyway, just because we want our suppliers to sustain a healthy business regardless. But it's also just part of who we are. So that's something that we've continued to do. But I think, those are definitely probably two of the biggest challenges to think of. But as I mentioned, I think there are a number of initiatives that have kind of popped up over the years with a more open source kind of greater transparent, this industry needs transparency for a lot of reasons for positive change. And so it is important, weighing those risks and understanding what you need to do, but ultimately it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations to Everlane. You guys have really gone down this path and really, I think set the standard in many ways. And it's not an easy one for others to go down. And I do think that, sunlight's a great disinfectant, as they say, right? So transparency in any endeavor really does, force a company to really be thorough in ways that you might take shortcuts because there are resource constraints and capacity issues. So thank you for that leadership. I want to turn to another topic, which is really exciting, which is your recent no new plastics commitment. And so could you talk a little bit about the commitment, what motivated the business to make this commitment? I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we made a commitment to sourcing no new plastic in 2018 for a couple of reasons, really. I think first, we were on the brink of launching a new product category in technical outerwear. So think of things like rain jackets and coats and other water durability and performance related outerwear, which are pretty much entirely made of polymers and synthetics. And prior to that, our brand really sat very comfortably in the natural fiber world. So with the launch of this new category, we understood from the beginning that if the launch and if the category was successful, our plastic related impacts were going to increase significantly. And so we wanted to put a commitment in place from the very beginning to start off on the right foot by sourcing recycled content just from the outset. We also knew, however, that plastics have a way of showing up in things that you don't ask for and that sometimes you're not even aware of. So from things like trims, buttons and zippers, to packaging, to hang tags, to functional components of footwear, there's hidden plastics in so many of our products and items that we use in our daily lives, even outside of apparel. So, having that keen awareness of, plastic waste in general, and just like the proliferation of plastic and pollution, and the fact that they're all made out of virgin fossil fuels, kind of underlied the entire idea. So we set out with this very broad commitment to remove all virgin plastics from our supply chain across our products and categories and packaging.
Does the commitment include does it cover bioplastics or is it fossil fuel-based plastics?
Yeah, so it really just covers virgin fossil fuel-based plastics. We have found some success in, so essentially the idea is to design out all virgin fossil-based polymers, either through the incorporation of recycled alternatives or other types of alternatives altogether. And so we've had some successes. We've definitely had a lot of successes in the recycled polymer side, and some that we've introduced and others that we're still testing on more of like the biosynthetic route.
And this is, the scope of the commitment is for all new products. Is that right? I'm sorry if I didn't.
No, it's okay. It's for all products.
All products.
Completely. Yeah. So after we made this commitment in 2018, any new product that we launched had this element already built in from the beginning. So our performance outerwear started as being all the polymers were 100% recycled. And we've tried to leverage this for newer categories that have come on, that we've introduced as well. So things like our activewear, as well as our swimwear, which are a little bit complicated because they both include elastane, which is one of the issues that we have, one of those kind of innovation gaps that we're still struggling to convert and accomplish within this goal. So, we set out to complete this no new plastic commitment by the end of 2021. We've had some really incredible successes. We've been able to convert across packaging entirely. We've designed out virgin polymers and plastics. For footwear, we have transitioned over 45% of our plastic componentry to recycled alternatives. And overall, including apparel by volume, we're a little over 90% of the way transitioned. Wow. But we do have these kind of lingering issues of things like elastane, of recycled content and durability, of trims and components, that we really have an innovation gap and a lack of alternatives in this space. So we know we're not going to reach this goal this year, and we're being very open and transparent about that. And so we're searching for ways that we can partner with others and really just, try to reinvest in our own supply chains, as well as in, entrepreneurs that are starting out to try to tackle this together.
Yes. Well, if you don't set out on a big target, you probably won't achieve very much, but by having that really audacious target, look how far you've gotten already, right? So congratulations. And yeah, I would imagine just by the nature of being public about your success and your challenges, you're likely to bring on entrepreneurs and small startups that might have some unique ideas for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. So that's actually what we are trying to do right now. We're actually launching a fellowship program later this week on Thursday, August 26th. We are launching our first ever grant and fellowship program, specifically aimed at tackling this last 10%. We'll be inviting early stage entrepreneurs to have access to some financial resources. We're offering $20,000 per grant recipient. And they'll also have access to essentially the entire Everlane team, a number of kind of external, industry experts, and they'll have the opportunity to work collaboratively, both with our team as well as across the fellowship group, to really help tackle this issue of the persistence of plastic in our everyday lives.
That's cool. And where could someone find out more about that? Is that on your website?
Yeah, everlane.com/plastic.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll put that in the chat so folks can go there. And I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or in the Q&A. So maybe next, let's just talk about the organic commitment, which is another big commitment that Everlane took on. And could you talk a little bit about what led the business to go down the path of organic cotton? and
Yes.
where you're at in that process.
Sure. Yeah. So in March 2020, so just last year, we committed to transitioning all of our virgin cotton to certified organic sources by 2023. So again, a very bold and short timeline commitment. So I think first of all, we knew the troubling origins of conventional cotton, which is grown with an enormous amount of toxic pesticides and chemicals, often in monocultural agricultural systems, which strip soil of nutrients and contaminates local local waterways, and really can endanger, I think, the people who are working on these farms and in surrounding areas. So our underlying commitment really stems from the broader social and environmental responsibility goals that we have as an organization. On perhaps a more strategic level, we know that cotton makes up a little over 70% of our material base by volume. So whenever we think about our commitments and our strategy and layer on our ability to have these positive impacts, a material that makes up over 70% of our volume seems like a pretty good place to prioritize. So it's kind of, we're straddling again these two sides of responsibility to our mission and core values with the strategic approach to why it matters for us and for our customers. So just after 1 year of this commitment, we've already converted 55% of our virgin cotton to organic sources, which is definitely a great start, and it's something to be celebrated. Certainly, but I think we also anticipate challenges similar to our no new plastic commitment as we progress, within this bigger goal. So I'm sure we'll be faced with challenges here too in the coming years.
Yeah, I know when we spoke last, you mentioned some of the COVID-19 related supply chain bottlenecks, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I'm mindful of the time, and I want to encourage folks, if they have questions, to put them in the chat. I'm going to turn this back over to Melanie. Are there any questions that for Katina?
Yes, we do. We have a question from Karen. How do you communicate if you have a primary source for a material who has a short-term supply issue and you have to go to a secondary source?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that's actually something that we are currently grappling with, just with all of the supply chain constraints within this industry, whether it's an availability issue or a pricing issue, or just not being able to get goods and materials where you need them on time. We kind of approach this two-pronged. The first is who our long-term suppliers are. So those are the suppliers that we have built kind of longer term mutually beneficial relationships with over time, and that we feel very comfortable and confident sharing their information. They've already bought into that idea in partnership with us. And so that's who we kind of showcase and talk about most often. The other side are these kind of shorter term, either needs based, or sometimes you're testing out a new product, a new material, and you're not sure how it's going to perform or how the customer is going to react to it. And in those cases, I think it's still really important to have a level of transparency. And so something that we're going to start doing is publishing a list of these kind of like more auxiliary suppliers to us. We still feel very confident in our relationships because we do a really rigorous job of kind of vetting any such suppliers for these kind of supply issues or any type of, secondary sources that we need to take on. So we still feel a level of comfort and just success in that. So that's something that we're going to start doing as well, especially, coming out of COVID. This has happened quite a lot, and we still want to remain transparent within our commitment. So they may not have a beautiful kind of editorialized photo shoot because we can't physically accommodate that right now, but we are going to start publishing who those kind of auxiliary suppliers are. And who knows, maybe some of them will become longer term partnerships.
Great. I see there's a question from Heather Deeth. So she wrote, thanks so much, Katina, for sharing your work. I love Everlane and your work. What has shifted, or are there any major new areas of ethical focus coming out of the pandemic for Everlane?
Yeah, I think, well, definitely, first of all, we're working with a lot of countries and with a lot of suppliers who are still really struggling with COVID. And that's definitely not to be minimized by any means. So I think there are some workforce related issues, health related issues as it relates to ethics that we still have to pay very close attention to. And we work really closely with a number of auditing partners. We work with Elevate, Intertech, and a smaller boutique firm called Arch Advisors. And they all are really helping us as kind of the boots on the ground to help us stay in contact with our facilities and with the workers. So we're still able to offer like worker sentiment surveys, even in the challenges, that COVID has presented and is still presenting. So I think that's definitely one that from like a worker well-being and health and safety perspective that we've always taken seriously, but COVID has definitely changed the game entirely, and that we're just, we're both by necessity and by interest, we're paying much closer attention to.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Just some of the challenges that some of the suppliers and the workers are facing right now. Melanie, maybe do we have time for one more question before we wrap up?
Sure, why not?
Okay, great. Maybe we'll just go back to the organic cotton initiative, right?
Sure.
So, like, how are you dealing with some of the transition to organic cotton? Is there a pricing challenge? There's availability challenge? How are you managing some of those issues? I would think that it could be quite difficult right now.
Yes, and we're definitely experiencing both pricing challenges and availability bottlenecks as well. I think there's always been an ongoing challenge in organic cotton because the fiber makes up about 1% of global supply anyway, so competition for it can be rather fierce. In addition to that, I think India, being the world's largest supplier of organic and still unfortunately struggling with COVID-related shutdowns, is creating a huge bottleneck in the supply chain, as well as contributing to some of that price volatility. There are other global challenges that are impacting this as well. But for us, it's really forcing us to think again a bit more strategically about this commitment and ultimately what the goals and intended impacts are for the program. So we've been discussing a lot internally about how we can maybe adjust our commitment, not in terms of the timing or in terms of like the progressive kind of nature of what we're trying to do. But we're really thinking about how we can support more of this transition to change and into positive impacts. And the way that we're approaching that is by supporting pre-organic or transitional organic farmers. So it helps us on the one side of mitigating our own availability and pricing constraint related risks, but it's also hopefully going to help drive some of that meaningful change into transition into this availability of providing both the market and the drivers for more farmers to convert to organic practices and certification. So I think that's going to be our next step in this commitment. So nothing to announce officially just yet, but that's where we're headed. Great,
thank you. And well, thank you for today and all your insights. And the next collective sounds just super exciting, and can't wait to learn more about some of the recipients. And I'll turn it back over to you, Melanie.
Well, thank you, Tim. We did have a few other questions, so I will take those offline to make sure that we answer those. But I am afraid that is all the time that we have for today. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation on how Everlane's transparency efforts are leading the way for consumers. A special and warm thank you to Tim and Katina for your time and valuable insights. We'll be hosting the next Pure Strategies Conversations webinar in September. Be sure to check our website for more details. I just wanted to get another screen ready for you. Just a moment. I hear the dog. So more details can be found on the September webinar on our website, where you can also find lots of additional resources that might be of use for your work, and certainly feel free to reach out to Tim directly. We look forward to connecting with you again or having you attend another Pure Strategies webinar in the near future. Stay well, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.